Kia ora koutou, welcome to our weekly shout out events from the SBN, where we get to hear from a couple of our amazing organisations from across the network. So my name is James Griffin and I lead the SBN's work to create a more circular economy. And I'm delighted to be able to host this session where we'll be featuring Reclaim and 3R Group. We'll hear about how these organisations are helping businesses tackle New Zealand's waste problem and really playing a key role in helping us transition from this linear take, make, waste economy that predominates to a circular one where goods and materials are kept in as high value circulation for as long as possible, waste and pollution are designed out, and natural systems are regenerated. So how this session works is that we're going to be hearing from our speakers for around about 5 minutes, and then you'll have a chance to get those questions that you have answered after their talk. And so at the bottom of your screens there's a Q&A button, so please, as you hear the talks and those questions arise, please text them in. So, and first up, we're going to be hearing from Dom Dixon, and he is a sustainability advisor at Reclaim. And Reclaim are New Zealand's largest privately owned supplier of recycling services. Then we're going to be hearing from Adele Rose, and Adele is the chief executive of 3R Group, who assist businesses improve their environmental sustainability performance via product stewardship. A reminder, as you hear these presentations, please do fire in those questions. This is your chance to get them answered. But first up, it's a pleasure to introduce Dom. Over to you, Dom.
Thanks, James. Thanks to everyone for coming along, and also to everyone behind the scenes for making this possible. So as mentioned, I'm from Reclaim. And we provide specialist commercial recycling collections, but our advisory services are starting to take off as well. And one of the things that we see over and over again are some issues with commercial waste. So waste, as you all know, it's probably the most visible pollutant that we experience. Right now, we create around 55% of this at work. Well, that was pre-COVID statistics, so apologies if it hasn't been amended. And out of all that waste that we create, 75% of it is actually recyclable. What we actually recycle, that sits at around 30%. Right now, when waste is out of sight, it's out of mind. And that's one of those frequented problems that just isn't going to go away. So how can we improve these stats? How can we learn better waste minimisation behaviours? How can we make a measurable difference to the material that we chuck into landfill? Pretty good starting point is knowledge, and that's where Reclaim can really help. With over 40 years of experience in the recycling realm, it's fair to say that collectively, all of us at Reclaim have got a pretty decent understanding of all things recycling and waste. And we really want to share it because those stats are pretty frightening. Although some companies are testing new ways of mobile and flexible working, there's still a massive gap in knowledge between public knowledge and that sort of expert knowledge. And yeah, so not only do Reclaim's advisory services help your company progress towards its waste diversion goals, but the way in which we engage staff in waste minimisation education, that reaches far further than the workplace. So we decrease your company's diversion rate, but we also increase the awareness of your staff and create better waste minimisation, waste minimisers, sorry. So our 3 specialised advisory services are waste audits. What gets measured gets improved. So this is a famous saying from Peter Drucker. Not sure if you've heard it. Anyway, these are what we consider the foundation for all waste diversion journeys. They provide a snapshot of the componentry of your waste, where it's going, what's happening to it, some of the behaviours behind that disposal. We think it's a fundamental tool to tracking your company's diversion rates. Secondly, we've got education. The gap in knowledge, as I said before, the gap in public knowledge of recycling is one of the biggest hindrances in the waste world. And our education can be tailored to your internal staff, your cleaners, your facility managers, the whole shebang. We've got a whole variety of sessions that can cover off a 15-minute overview of on-site recycling streams right through to pretty comprehensive 60-minute waste minimisation education session. And finally, we've got their infrastructure, diagnostics and reporting, policies, goals, bin placements, infrastructure. Reporting on these can often seem tedious and really time consuming. But with our expertise, these processes are completely streamlined, ensuring that your waste minimisation goals are resolute and reachable. So yeah. In terms of, I know that was really short, but in terms of what's coming up next for us, we've got this pretty cool idea. Currently, we do all of our waste audits here on site at Reclaim, which restricts our reach to people in Wellington, Christchurch and other major centres. So right now we are developing an introductory resource that outlines waste audits and how you can do them on site using your own facilities. Covers off everything from standard operating procedures, health and safety, right through to report generation. So that's something that's in the pipeline. In the next couple of months we'll be seeing come to fruition, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Just in terms of how to contact us, as you can see, we've got our website there, but feel free if you just want to give me a call at all on the number below, or flick me an email. I'm always happy to help. Yeah. Thanks, James.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that overview, Dom. And we've got some questions coming in, as I know, as you're saying, you know, that waste being so visible, it's really, you know, has been traditionally a sort of a key starting point for businesses looking at sustainability. And of course, it's, you know, we're getting increasingly more educated about the issues that waste is creating for us, you know, across our various environments, and particularly marine environment. So yeah, love the fact that you're offering, you know, some sort of process for enabling businesses to start to tackle that via that audit. And I, you know, we totally agree with that sentiment. You know, you sort of, you can't measure what you can't manage. And I suppose, yeah, one of the things I've been, you know, picking up and becoming increasingly aware of in terms of sentiments from the rest of the network is there is an increasing sort of desire to have more transparency around the sort of destinations for waste. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the sort of highlight, you know, issue has been highlighted by the sort of issue with China no longer accepting the sort of low quality waste from a couple of years ago. But yeah, have you got any sort of thoughts on that, and how businesses can really get to grips with where waste is being processed? Yeah,
like you mentioned it as well, especially with the current climate with COVID. We saw a lot of public unrest, I'll call it, around where the recycling is actually going. And so for that, it definitely it compounded all of the market vulnerability that we've seen in recyclable material. And it's one of those things that, especially over the next couple of years, once those discussions around the landfill levy and that sort of stuff continues to happen, we'll see more and more waste minimisation approaches. We'll see more onshore processing capabilities, but right now we struggle with with actually processing onshore, and it comes right back down to volume. So New Zealand's a pretty tiny country. We've got a stat that actually represents it. One of my favourite stats. That's why I remember it so well. But New Zealand were to collect all the paper that we recycle over a year. If we were just to store that, that would keep a large paper mill in Asia, recycling mill, running for around 10 days. So that tells in itself sort of volume that's required, and that's one of the major issues we do face. And until we get really state-of-the-art onshore reprocessing facilities, then that's one of the real things that we do face. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Dom. And I suppose, yeah, that sort of perhaps leads on to another question that we've had from the audience around if you see, what do you see the role of government in helping to reduce and divert waste from landfill? Yeah.
So obviously with the landfill levy increase, we've got a couple other schemes coming around. The container deposit scheme that's in talks at the moment. So there's a lot of pressure being placed back onto consumers as to how we deal with the waste that we do take on with the products we purchase. And obviously there's an element of whether or not you should be purchasing the product in itself if it's got all this extra packaging. But yeah, I mean, in the coming years, you've got to hope that waste does get highlighted in government talks and reform and that sort of stuff. And the good thing is that there's some pretty strong leaders at the moment that are talking about it, which is very cool to see. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And just to fire another question at you, which is really around what's the best place for businesses to access information about what is or isn't recyclable from your perspective? Do you have that information on a website?
So my boss is probably going to frown at this, but Auckland Council actually has a really fantastic resource, and it's a search bar. And in that search bar, you put in any sort of material and it pops back how it's recycled, where it's recycled, that sort of stuff. So on top of that, we do have recycle.co.nz, which is a massive website full of information. So that's another great resource that we often send people to. Yeah.
Right. And SBN does have also some resources, particularly around plastic packaging. Mm-hmm. We can also provide you some links to.
Yeah.
There's a specific question around recycling of textiles, because we hear a lot about sort of plastic. But is that something that you provide any service in?
No, not at Reclaim. So we tend to focus on the mainstream recycling stream. So your plastics, your glass, your cardboard and paper. We do tend to push garments and textiles and that sort of stuff. We do try and give those off to Salvation Armies and those sorts of organisations who tend to make better use of them than Reclaim does. Yeah.
And there's a sort of a question about sort of going sort of further up the sort of waste hierarchy and looking at the sort of design of products to enable better recycling. Is that something that your advisory services provide some thoughts on, about the potentially simplification of products and alignment of different material types?
Yeah, in terms of material that should be used, or commonly and easily recyclable material, we do provide a range of advisory services that do cover those, and we're happy to give out advice as well. But it's definitely, we are focused more at the waste end, but we do have pretty good knowledge of what material can really be recycled, where it's recycled, some of the resources that go into recycling it, and that sort of stuff. So we can provide pretty good advice on the other end of your life cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'm sure when we hear from our next speaker, Adele, at 3R, she'll no doubt have some good input onto that question.
For sure.
And yeah, there's a bit of a quite a bit of sentiment in terms of that education. How can businesses get someone like yourself in to provide to talk to them specifically, and is there a cost involved in that?
Yeah, so there is a cost, and it ranges. We tend to, once a business approaches us, we go through with them an education package, something that we think would really make it easy for their staff to be engaged and also to absorb all the knowledge. So it does vary right from a one-off session all the way through to 5 or 6 sessions. So the best way to get costings involved with that would be to either email myself or go onto the Reclaim site and go through the advisory services link. There's a little inquiries box there, so they can easily go through that as well.
Great, thank you. And there's a question around if you take waste materials from transfer stations and community recycling centres, or is it just direct from businesses that you operate?
There is a couple around the Upper North Island that we do service. I don't know off the top of my head. I think there may be one in Whangaproa that we do service, but it is something that we definitely, with the current servicing timetables, we do service, but it's just a matter of figuring out where in the service that it actually coincides. Yeah.
Hey, that's thank you, Dom. And then I suppose just maybe one sort of last question before we move on. Yeah. What's the sort of one piece of advice you would give to an organisation and to the people listening today to address and play their role in New Zealand's waste issues?
Well, I guess normalising the conversation. For me personally, once we throw waste in the bin, we don't think about it again. But if we can normalise behaviours of recycling and get that knowledge between the gap in the knowledge between public and experts to be a lot smaller around what happens to the recycling, what's easily recyclable, that sort of stuff. So it really comes down to education and, like I said before, just really bringing that gap a bit smaller. Yeah.
Awesome, Dom. Yeah, I totally agree. That sort of that education is crucial, and it's great that the likes of yourselves at Reclaim are providing that service. So, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts and answering those questions. We may bring you back towards the end if there's if we get more questions that we think you can add value on. But yeah, thank you so much in the meantime for contributing to the session, Dom.
Thanks, James.
So now it's my pleasure to introduce Adele Rose, the Chief Executive at 3R Group. So Adele, over to you.
Okay, so James, can you hear me and see me?
I can indeed. So
lovely. Thank you very much. And Dom, great to listen to you as well. Reclaim have been one of the businesses which is a familiar name that we've seen as we progress through waste to resources, and great champions for plugging along and doing great stuff for particularly education around waste. So great to hear from you. So thank you all for participating in this shout out, and thanks to SBN for bringing us the opportunity as well. So I've got 5 minutes to talk to you about 3R, specifically to inspire and educate you, promote 3R, and hopefully spark some of those magic business to business connections. So our purpose, I'll start off with who we are. So we're a company of between 24 and 30 people. We been a little hammered by COVID, so we're slightly less people than we would normally have, and we have a mix of contract and permanent people. We're located in Hawke's Bay, Auckland and Christchurch. We're an impact enterprise, and that means that we place equal value on environmental, social and economic outcomes in the work that we do. We work on a partnership basis with our customers for mutual benefit and for the people that need to buy into the why of what we do and what our customers do. We believe that the current linear economy is unsustainable, that we have to transition to a circular economy, and that primarily we'll all have to work together to realise the benefits. So I'll talk to you about some of the pain points that we help our customers with. So the pain point that we like to solve is waste, and most specifically waste that's generated by incorrect or even missing capture points for resources at end of life. And we tend to work with the difficult to manage waste streams. So they might be hazardous or contaminated in some type of way. Significantly as well, they're not necessarily designed for disassembly. So that's something that we really work on with our customers, is how can we actually get better design of products for disassembly to capture the resources. But we work on this by applying imagination and science, and we do that within a partnership framework. So some examples of our work you can see on the screen here. So interestingly, and I know Tony is in on this call, but we have been trying to catch up a little bit with the disassembly of the child restraints. And
sorry, Adele, we're not seeing your screen share.
Oh,
sorry.
Hold on, sorry about this. Are you seeing any of that?
No, we're still looking only at you. Do you? Excellent. Great.
Okay. Right. Hold on. Are we good?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, you didn't miss much. So where I was up to was talking about Tony, who was in on the call, and spent some time last week with our team going through dismantling child restraints. And so you might think that they're fairly simple. They've got some metal bits, they've got some plastic bits, and they've got some fabric. But in actual fact, child restraints are built not to fall to pieces, and that specifically they're not built to be pulled apart. And so it requires quite a range of tools and muscle to actually deconstruct a child restraint to make all the pieces valuable resources again. So that's been quite an exercise over the last little while. So we have a national footprint, and through stewardship programs we manage, we have the impact of the lives of all New Zealanders, even if they don't know it. So I guess that's the other thing about stewardship, is that and it's a good thing, it's embedded so much into products, if it's done effectively, that it's just a matter of doing the right thing and putting the goods into the right capture system. So you don't need to know what it's called, but you need to know that the goal of disassembly and capturing of the resources has been done properly. Recently, we've started to influence some of the packaging outcomes at national level as well, and that's critical due to consumer and government pressure, and of course the marine harm that we're seeing from packaging. We also work across voluntary and regulatory arenas, and we're at the forefront of product stewardship for work which is within the priority product framework under the Waste Minimisation Act. So one of the tools that we use is product stewardship itself. And so product stewardship is often talked about as producers taking responsibility for products at the end of life. And that's really the barbecue version, if you like. The reality is a lot broader. And the reason that's why we term product stewardship as being the cornerstone of the circular economy, because you need to have gone through all the steps in order to steward a product to be able to start thinking about how you build its, the resources at end of life back into a circular economy solution. So we engage with our customers and we spend time finding out what they believe or where they believe their responsibility starts and ends. And so those discussions can range from how committed they are to funding product design, to design the waste out in the first place, through to how involved they wish to be in the capture and the take back of those resources and disassembly of them, and you know, eventually to actually start using that product back into the original manufacture of their product. So our chosen area of impact is the environment, and that is our direct business activity impact and our social impact. So as a customer of 3R, we measure your impact by doing the right thing, and we measure our impact by helping you deliver to do that right thing. And then we transparently publish this information through our Sustainable Development Report, which you can find on our website. Motivation to do the right thing varies widely, and that's one thing we've learned, is that everyone's motivation is different. And so in reference to Simon Sinek, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's really important for our customers to understand why their customers wish to engage in a stewardship framework as well. And it's different for everybody. Sustainability is heading to the top of the boardroom agenda now, like health and safety has before it, and we think that's really important. We are really hoping that through the trading restrictions that we've had, and as we re-emerge with a new economy, that's going to be more firmly cemented at board level. So the buy-in across a business encompasses the shareholders, investors, directors, governors, and through to the rest of us. So some of the benefits of product stewardship are listed here on the screen, and basically you will be familiar with a push concept and a pull concept, but the biggest is consumer awareness around waste and sustainability. And I'd also like to suggest that with the focus of the coalition government on using tools within the Waste Minimisation Act, we've actually seen from a business level some change around the desire to act. So what's next for 3R? Well, hopefully I've inspired you to reach out and have a conversation with us, or you feel compelled to refer a colleague to us so that we can work together for mutual impact. Over the past few months nationally, we've sought solace in what we can do and achieve within our own borders, and by using our own ingenuity, or as we call it within 3R, our imagination. So I recently wrote an article posted on LinkedIn imploring business owners to pull the plug on inefficiency, not sustainability. And I think that with the use of priority product declaration tools in the Waste Minimisation Act imminent, that is going to be even more important for investment in sustainable outcomes. That's me. Questions?
Excellent. Many thanks for that overview, Adele. So lots of things to cover there, and it's great to see we've got some questions coming in. And one of the questions we've heard about is from, in your view, and you touched on this, but maybe good to delve into this. What are the best incentives available for businesses to actually design out waste of their products and or systems?
Well, there's a whole lot of reasons, and so once again it does very much depend on the product that's being stewarded, but one is, what is the residual impact that you've left your customer with? So they've purchased your product, used it for the purpose in which it was intended, and then they have something left over at the end of it. So if you're thinking about a hazardous waste stream, you typically have a piece of packaging that then needs something doing with it to make it useful again. So the incentives really sit with what is it that your customers need, and what position are you leaving them in after they've had benefit of your product, and but they're still left with, you know, the wasted element.
Excellent, thanks. And actually, Adele, would it be okay if you just press stop sharing your screen? So, and then I think that means we can get a better view of yourself. Perfect. Thanks so much for that. One of the things you also sort of touched on was the regulatory framework around some of these issues and product stewardship. Do you have any sort of updates or insights or thoughts on what could be coming around the corner that businesses should be starting to get prepared for, or too early to say?
No, I think so the work that we're involved in is around end-of-life tyres and synthetic refrigerants. And so both of those sort of design of solutions and capturing of industry's thoughts and feedback has been completed. And so that's now going through a process within Ministry for Environment to prepare additional consultation documents around regulatory impact. So we all use tyres and we all use refrigerants. Actually, we have fridges and we have cars with air conditioning, and if you have businesses and cool stores, etc. So you will be impacted by regulation. The key is to ensure that that impact is the least problematic, so that we all engage with it. We don't have barriers for engaging. It's a bit tricky when you're talking about a gas, so that's very much industry focused. But for tyres, it's about making sure that you are using drop-off systems that will be established. I think the biggest one and kind of unknown is around plastics. So you'll recall from consultation documents pre-Christmas that MFE produced was consultation on the range of plastics to be captured within priority product. So essentially, priority product just means that for a range of materials, once it's been declared, industry have between 1 and 3 years to put together a stewardship scheme that will fit within the regulation. 3 years is a short period of time to develop industry-wide schemes. So if you're in that space where you are importing, distributing or manufacturing any of those products, you really need to start thinking really carefully about how you're going to participate in industry-wide stewardship. But it's imminent.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So watch this space. I suppose, yeah, we've got. There's been a question on your views on hazardous materials. So, you know, we're currently using some of them, and technology can really mitigate some of the impacts. But what about the progress on actually designing them out completely? What anything on that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Very much with hazardous materials, we're still at the bottom of the cliff because we haven't changed our systems, and perhaps we can't either, but we haven't changed our systems to remove the use of the hazardous materials. So you think about you own a deck or you built a deck, you want to protect it from the weather elements. You have a choice when you go and purchase that product as to how disposable the residual of that product is once you've finished it. Now, ideally, you would use the whole lot, but some people don't. Probably, if you look in our sheds, all of us have a bit of leftover spray and a little bit of leftover paint and stains, etc. So inappropriately disposed of, it makes it a hazardous material. The key is to make sure that the disposal method, the capturing and disposal method of those hazardous materials is as watertight as it can be, so that it doesn't cause issues inappropriately disposed of, which would be throwing it in a skip bin, or, you know, burying it in your rubbish bin so that it ends up tipped out at the dump.
Thank you. Okay. And a question, sort of a general question on something dear to my heart around product stewardship guidelines. And for those who don't know, 3R are a key partner in SBN's national program around product stewardship, and so really appreciate the input and support that you're providing on that, Adele. And this particular question is around practical tips on product stewardship guidelines.
Yes. So how long have you got? It's like anything that we do in life or business, is that you have to start somewhere. And so the easiest place to start is looking at your costs around your waste. What do you know how much that you're putting out, or how much you're asking someone else to get rid of, by volume and by cost? And that was the same message that Dom's giving, is if you don't measure it, you don't know how to start making reductions. But the reality can be that some people know this information really well, but they don't actually then understand what the impact is downstream of them, or what changes they can make upstream. So there's many jumping on and jumping off points that you can use when looking at stewarding of your product at end of life. But just start at one point, make it easy for yourself, and seek knowledge from others that have been through it. A lot of it is really logical when you start on the pathway. Not saying it's not easy, but it's logical.
Great, thanks, Adele. And to build on that, we, as an output of a series of workshops that 3R helped us deliver last year, along with Inside Commercial, Fuji Xerox, and Abilities Group, we've developed a set of starting point guidelines for product stewardship, so we can provide a link to that. Another question, Adele, is whereabouts are you located?
Oh, physically, I live in Central Hawke's Bay, and I am sitting right now in Hastings. Our office is in Hastings, but we have workshops in Christchurch and in Auckland. And so, there's a sort of core of us that travel a lot between Wellington and Auckland. So we are national, making good use of Zoom and Teams lately, and it's good to see how that's catching on, because we're really keen to reduce our travel footprint. Even though we offset our carbon every year, it'd be great to not have to offset so much. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I think the use of sort of online Zoom type tools is something we're all seeing an explosion of to the benefit of environmental and time perspective. But what in terms of I suppose on those post or COVID themes, are you seeing any changes in businesses' view on waste or any changes to pre-COVID?
Probably what has had the biggest impact on businesses' view of waste is China National Sword, and the closing of those borders, even though that is actually not a new thing. For consumers, it was a fairly new thing. And then the impact of councils being able to take certain materials at curbside, and then the push back up to businesses. So I don't think that COVID has necessarily had an impact on business around their waste, but it has made them look at being more, how can we be more contained in New Zealand? We've all understood the opportunity of doing things within our own country to protect us. So it's that thought, thinking and feeling that is having an impact, rather than an understanding of waste itself. So it's a change in the way people are thinking and approaching things.
No, that makes total sense. Thanks, Adele. And then I suppose I'll just ask a sort of final question, similar to one that I asked Dom before. So, you know, if there's just one piece of advice you'd like to provide the listeners today, what would that be?
That would be, don't be a sustainability person working in isolation of your financial people. Make sure that the cost of end of life is built into the cost of your product. So internalize the externalities, and that's the same for anything. If we're talking about the wastage of water or use of water, any other impact on the environment, we're actually going to make a step change. We have to put the true cost of that into our outputs. So yeah, don't work in isolation, make friends with your financial people.
Very good. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for those insights in that presentation, both Adele and again, Dom. I mean, so just to sort of recap on some of the sort of themes that we've heard. I mean, you know, Dom started off talking about the importance of knowing what your sort of waste is and auditing, so you can't manage what you don't measure. And then the importance of education, and you know, education leads to sort of action and substantive action, which is obviously what we're all here to do, to make an impact. And then we heard around the services that 3R deliver around product stewardship, and some very sound advice about how to get going in that arena. So I mean, in terms of, you know, product stewardship, as I alluded to earlier on, we are running a national product stewardship campaign. We will actually be kicking off with a communications campaign over the next few months, and we'd love to get you all involved in that, and more details will come. But an initial element is a pre-campaign survey, which we'd love to get your input into, which is essentially going to be asking, from your perspective, how important is it for organizations, businesses, your suppliers, to provide product stewardship with the products that they supply to you? And we just want to gauge how important that is to you. So do look out for that survey that will be coming to you soon. So that's been a fascinating set of presentations and discussions, and thank you for all of you who tuned in and asked those questions. And thank you so much again, Adele and Dom, for your time and insights into this crucial area for New Zealand. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.